here is my favorite. Here is Debbie Wasserman-Schultz at the hearing. Now, let's remember what this is about. Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, they revealed malfeasance inside and a collusion of Twitter with the FBI and other government agencies to censor Americans' free speech. And that should be a huge story. But of course, it's not to the Democrats and the corporate media because they're owned by the same billionaires who want to censor you. They don't want the truth to be known about the wars. They don't want the truth to be known about COVID or the lockdowns or the vaccines or anything, or about Russiagate or the January 6th. And they don't want the truth about anything to get out. That's what they have as narrative control. And here's Debbie Wasserman-Schultz. She gets, you remember her? Okay, you remember who? She's the corrupt... She used to run the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016. She had to step down. I don't know if you're I'll tell you in a second, but here's her starting.
Mr. Taibbi, I want to ask about journalistic ethics and information sources. The Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics asserts that journalists should have...
So she wants to talk about ethics. Debbie Wasserman-Schultz wants to talk about who better to talk about ethics than the person who got caught rigging the 2016 primary so badly that she had to step down. She got fired from the head of the DNC. Debbie Wasserman-Schultz to resign as DNC chair as email scandal rocks the Democrats. Wow. Noted ethics expert Debbie Wasserman-Schultz is worried about ethics with Matt Taibbi. And if you believe that, I've got a Russiagate theory to sell you. So here,
Jimmy, how did Debbie Wasserman-Schultz respond to being exposed as being corrupt and rigging the primary against Bernie? Debbie Wasserman-Schultz and Democrats responded by blaming Russia. And that's the playbook they've been following ever since. Any scrutiny of their corruption, of their wrongdoing, is deflected by just blaming Russia. That's the exact same playbook here.
So here, let's listen to this garbage. I'll play it through, and here we go.
Mr. Taibbi, I want to ask about journalistic ethics and information sources. The Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics asserts that journalists should avoid political activities that can compromise integrity or credibility. Being a Republican witness today certainly casts a cloud over your objectivity. But a deeper concern that I have relates to the ethics of how journalists receive and present certain information. Journalists should avoid accepting spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion. Would you agree with that?
I think it depends.
Really? You wouldn't agree that a journalist should avoid spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion?
Congresswoman, I've done probably a dozen stories involving whistleblowers. Every reported story that I've ever done across 3 decades involves sources who have motives. Every time you do a story, you're making a balancing test between the public interest.
Reclaiming my time. Thank you very much.
So he's starting to explain to her how journalism works. And often when a whistleblower comes forward, it's because they have an axe to grind with somebody. And so that you have to take what they're saying with a grain of salt, but you still report the information. That's what he's saying. And you have to balance it. That's what he's saying. Okay. And she doesn't want to hear that. Because again, the narrative is that he was handed this story, not that he curated it himself inside Twitter, that Elon Musk gave him access to anything. It's that Elon Musk limited his scope of what he could see, and he handed him this certain narrative that Elon Musk. That's what she's trying to push, and that's why she's going to bring up Joe Rogan.
I ask you this because before you became Elon Musk's hand-picked journalist, and pardon the oxymoron, you stated this on Joe Rogan's podcast.
So they don't call him a journalist. They're still doing that. So their whole thing is to slander and smear and discredit. Do you see this, the game? Do you see that? Okay.
Asked about being spoon-fed information, and I quote, "I think that's true of any kind of journalism," and you'll see it behind me here. "I think that's true of any kind of journalism. Once you start getting handed things, then you've lost. They have you at that point, and you got to get out of that habit. You just can't cross that line."
So she's trying to say that that's what happened. So he said this on Joe Rogan. She's trying to say, well, didn't you just do this with Elon Musk and Twitter? This thing that you claimed you can't do. You can't just get handed things like you got handed a story by Elon Musk. That's the implication. Now we're going to give you the reveal in a second, but watch this.
Do you still believe what you told Mr. Rogan? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Good. Now, you crossed that line with the Twitter files.
No.
Elon Musk, it's my time. Please do not interrupt me. Elon Musk spoon-fed you his cherry-picked information, which you must have suspected promotes a slanted viewpoint, or at the very least generates another right-wing conspiracy theory. You violated your own standard, and you appear to have benefited from it. Before the release of the emails in August of last...
So she doesn't want him to explain that quote. She just clips that quote from Joe Rogan and acts like it means exactly what she wants it to mean. Now, we're going to show you in a second it doesn't. But now she's going to go into, again, this is the thing. He's trying to discredit these journalists. She's not going after the facts that they revealed. She's at a personal witch hunt, character assassination. That's all they have. And so that's what she's going to try to do now. She's going to say that Matt Taibbi reporting this stuff, he's doing it only for money. Even though everybody else gets a paycheck in the world and every other journalist at every other place does the exact same thing that Matt Taibbi does. You publish things and you hope it gets attention. Okay, here we go.
You had 661,000 Twitter followers. After the Twitter files, your followers doubled, and now it's 3 times what it was last August. I imagine your Substack readership, which is a subscription, increased significantly because of the work that you did for Elon Musk.
Hey, you broke a story that's super important, and now people became aware of it, and you. That's supposed to be bad. According to her, she makes that out to be a negative thing. You're supposed to report a story, and no one's supposed to find out about it, and no one's supposed to know that you reported it, and no one's supposed to want to follow you because you wrote that story. And if they do, if your story is successful and it gets passed around and a lot of people want to read it, and a lot of people get informed by it, and then a lot of people want to read more, that's bad. That means you're a bad journalist. That's what she's literally saying right now. Okay.
Jimmy, the only acceptable way.
Okay, go ahead.
The only acceptable way to make money in journalism, according to Debbie Wasserman-Schultz's logic, is to be, a host on MSNBC or some other outlet and get paid to parrot Democratic Party talking point and spread Russiagate propaganda. So Rachel Maddow, who gets paid more than $30 million a year to do 1 hour a week, spreading Russiagate, whatever else the Democratic Party wants it to. That's the legitimate way to make money in journalism, not be a reporter like Matt Taibbi who breaks a story and gets an audience for it. Like, it's his fault that people want to read his story. Should he not want his following to increase? Is he supposed to live in a hut and only share it with a small number of people? And the reason why his following increased because he exposed a major scandal that exposes people like Debbie Wasserman-Schultz. That's why people are interested, and she's mad that happened.
Figure on it, but it's quite obvious that you've profited from the Twitter files. You hit the jackpot on that Vegas slot machine to which you referred. That's true, isn't it?
I've also reinvested.
You've made some. No. Is it true that you have profited since you were the recipient of the Twitter files? You've made money. Yes or no?
Have you made money since you've what? Everybody gets a paycheck. What are you talking about? Have you made money? So now just making money at what you do for a living is now a sign that you're corrupt and not to be listened to. What? Where did she pull this out of her asshole from? I guess that's where she pulled it out of her asshole.
I think it's probably a wash, honestly.
No, you have made money that you did not have before, correct?
But I've also spent money that I didn't have before. I just hired a whole group of people to invest.
Patently obvious answer, reclaiming my time. Attention is a powerful drug. Eyeballs, money, prominence, attention, all of it points to problems with accuracy and credibility. And the larger point, which is social media companies are not biased against conservatives. And if anything, they ignored their own policies by allowing Trump and other MAGA extremists to post incessant lies, endangering public safety and even our democracy. Hypocrisy is the hangover of an addiction to attention. Now, I want to point out another alleged finding from the Twitter files. Mr. Schellenberger, you've referenced several times this $3.4 million that the FBI paid to Twitter in 2020 that was referenced in General Counsel Jim Baker's email. I first want to confirm that nowhere in the email does Baker say that the money was paid to censor information, take down posts, suspend accounts, or do anything relating to content moderation. Is that correct?
It is.
So what she's trying to say is that the FBI giving Twitter, a social media company, millions of dollars and then requesting censorship, that those two things aren't connected. That FBI just decided to give a couple millions of dollars to Twitter out of the goodness of their hearts. And it was for something else. It wasn't because they wanted influence and tell them what to do. That's what she's trying to pretend right now. And she's going to get, she doesn't see the real answer coming, and she's going to get egg on her face. Here we go.
Thank you. But honest reporting would have explained that the $3.4 million was paid to release information, not censor it. One of my colleagues on this panel repeated your distortions and told Americans this reimbursement was used to, quote, censor certain stories. That's a flat-out lie. Mr. Schellenberger, are you aware of Section 2706 under the Stored Communications Act? It says when social media companies comply with subpoenas, warrants, or court orders, it costs them money, so they get reimbursed. The FBI makes these requests and reimbursements to discover evidence then run relevant to a criminal investigation. Let me repeat that. The FBI makes these requests to help catch the bad guys. That helps keep child predators off social media sites. It helps keep violent criminals off our streets. I support the FBI and our law enforcement agencies. It would be nice if our Republican colleagues did the same and not fabricate explanations for payments that are defined for clear purposes in federal law. My time is just about wrapped up.
May I respond?
The truth is that social media companies are unregulated monoliths. They pose danger to individuals. They allow posts that bring harm. And that's the bottom line. That this
Posts are free speech is bad, and that's the bottom line. Social media allow posts, meaning free speech that harms, and that's bad, and we got to get rid of free speech. She's letting the cat out of the bag. And that's kind of remarkable that she said that, right, Aaron? Right at the end?
I mean, it's so revealing. It's not surprising. And she's revealing just how much contempt she has for freedom of speech, which is is supposed to be a core value in the U.S. And she's mad at these two journalists for exposing the censorship that she supports. And of course, she would never have a hearing where they drag in every host on MSNBC and grill them for profiting off of spreading the most deranged and dangerous conspiracy theory in recent memory, which is that the president of the U.S. was a Russian asset. They would never come in and grill them for that because they support those conspiracy theories and they support the grifting and the profiteering that was made off of that.
And so now she concludes, and watch what happens.
the other side will not tell you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman had no time to yield back, but I will let the gentleman, Mr. Schellenberger, respond. And I would also point out that I did not say what the FBI paid Twitter for. All I said was they paid Twitter $3.4 million.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I didn't ask Mr. Schellenberger a question.
Yeah, but the witness wants to respond, and the witness have been invited our guests, and frankly, they've been attacked by the federal government.
Please do that.
I'm going to let Mr. Schellenberger answer that before recognizing Mr. Bishop.
So are you going to do that as we move down the line of questioners?
The gentleman has not been recognized. You had your 5 minutes, and frankly, I think that's at the discretion of the chair. Mr. Schellenberger, you can respond briefly.
I'll be brief, which is that my understanding from those files is that Twitter had decided not to take that money until recently. So if you read that email, what Stasha, I believe, the person that sent it, is saying is that they started taking money after previously not taking it. And I believe that the reason that they had not taken it earlier was because they did not want that financial conflict clouding their relationship.
Mr. Chairman,
Boy, Debbie Wasserman-Schultz did not want him to say that because it just reveals her to be completely full of shit. And so what he just said was that, yeah, that is actually a conflict of interest. They knew it was a conflict of interest to take millions of dollars from the FBI while they were requesting censorship. And that's why they didn't take that money for a long time, up until very recently. And so she got egg on her face. She didn't, and isn't it scary that they don't want people to talk? They don't want him to give a rebuttal. They don't. Again, you talk about authoritarian. That's not Trump doing that. That's your Democratic sweethearts doing that. It's your Democratic Party sweethearts. So let me just see if this is the end of that.
is payment under federal law so that they can.
The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop, is recognized for.
So she just keeps trying. Remember, it was she knows how the rules work, except when it comes to her. It's my time. This is how the rules work. Except she can talk whenever she wants. So Matt Taibbi, actually, the next guy, gives him a chance to respond. And here's what he says.
Care to respond to the attack on your ethics? You weren't given really an opportunity to answer. And if you'd be brief, I've got a bunch of stuff I want to ask you as well.
Sure, just quickly, that moment on the Joe Rogan show, I was actually recounting a section from Seymour Hersh's book, Reporter, where he...
So now you remember the part where Debbie Wasserman-Schultz says to him, hey, you said you shouldn't be handed stories, and when you're doing that, that's bad. Remember that? She acted like he was talking. This is the context. Yes. Here it is.
Described a scene where the CIA gave him a story, and he was very...
So she's talking... Here, I'll go back.
Care to respond to the attack on your ethics? You weren't given really an opportunity to answer. And if you'd be brief, I've got a bunch of stuff I want to ask you as well.
Sure, just quickly, that moment on the Joe Rogan show, I was actually recounting a section from Seymour Hersh's book, Reporter, where he described a scene where the CIA gave him a story, and he was very uncomfortable. He said that I, who had always gotten the secrets, was being handed the secrets. Look, again, I've done lots of whistleblower stories. There's always a balancing test that you make when you're given material, and you're always balancing newsworthiness versus the motives of your sources. In this case, the newsworthiness clearly outweighed any other considerations, and I think everybody else who worked on the project agreed.
So that totally 100% different meaning to those words that Debbie Wasserman-Schultz clipped and quoted out of context. So when you put it in context, it has a totally different meaning. And so Matt Taibbi gave that. So what that again reveals is that the Democratic Party, the Democrats, aren't interested in free speech. They're not interested in stopping government malfeasance. They're not interested in stopping censorship. In fact, the exact opposite. They're willing to slander and smear in the most underhanded ways journalists who are telling truths and exposing corruption inside the government. They're willing to do that to them. That's what this is revealing. And do you want to see how that got reported? Here's how hacks report that stuff. So there's this guy, Aaron Maté, just, you know, there's no bigger hack in the world. And he says, Wasserman-Schultz. So this is the way he reports that what just happened. Journalists should avoid accepting spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted. You would agree with that? Taibbi, I think it depends. Wasserman-Schultz, really? Plays clip of Taibbi basically agreeing with the premise of her question on Rogan's pod. That's like he's supposed to be owning Taibbi on that. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. Here, Sam Sachs says, laugh my ass off at Taibbi getting bodied by Debbie Wasserman-Schultz of all people. Well, that's because he didn't get bodied, Sam. That's why. It's not. Here's Aaron Maté said, in claiming that Debbie Wasserman-Schultz bodied Matt Taibbi, you failed to add his response, where he explains the context for that quote, Cy Hurst talking about the CIA, and explaining that the Twitter files are clearly in public interest. Do you think they're not? No, that guy didn't respond to you.
No, he did respond.
Oh, he did.
He did respond.
Go ahead.
No, but who cares?
Right.
The point is, he's gloating over Debbie Wasserman-Schultz bodying Taibbi and not, of course, showing what Taibbi said in response. And the question is, do you think that these files are in the public interest or not? And this guy who I got in this spat with, he didn't give a direct answer to that question because he can't answer that question because he knows they're in the public interest, but they don't want to admit that for whatever reason. But they are. Anyone who denies that they're not in the public interest is then a fan of Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, who doesn't think it's in the public interest to expose intelligence agencies having a role in censoring people and spreading their own propaganda on social media.
And isn't it chilling that other journalists are doing this to Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberg? Isn't that the real chilling part? Sure, okay, Congress people, hired hacks, the servants of the billionaire class, the biggest liars in the world, politicians, of course, but other journalists are doing this. Isn't this is like Third Reich territory? Am I wrong?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's two aspects to it, or two main ones. And I should disclose here, Jimmy, that I started working a little bit with Matt on these Twitter files. I'm not doing too much because I have to focus on other stuff, but I've been involved somewhat in the work he's doing now. So I should disclose that in talking about this. But I think there's two things. One is there are people who just identify with the Democratic Party, like Aaron Maté, the guy who just clips videos all day long in the service of Democratic Party interests, right? But then there's also people who identify on the left, or whatever, who are just jealous of Matt Taibbi's accomplishments. I think he's been reporting for a very long time. He's done a lot. He's written multiple books, as he talked about, in defense of the attack on his character. He's won multiple awards, and he's had an impact. And he's been productive. He actually does reporting. He does work. I think there's an element here of just petty jealousy by people who want to knock him down, who just can't celebrate the work he's done.
I like what Jose Vega, our previous guest, said. He said, I don't know how Matt Taibbi can handle sitting there while being unfairly attacked, but kudos to him. None of those Democrats should ever be taken seriously again when it comes to journalism. They all fed into and promoted Russiagate as legitimate for over 4 years. If you want to see my stand-up special, become a member at jimmydore.com. It's only $10, and come see our live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, St. Paul, Honolulu, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, and more.